The Cannone a Grande Gittata 75/32 model 1937 was an Italian field gun developed before the Second World War to equip the Italian Regio Esercito's infantry divisions with a high-velocity, long-range field gun. It was conceived in 1937 by reusing the carriage of the Obice 75/18 model 1935 and installing a new, longer barrel. Although it originated as a field gun, it turned out to also be an adequate anti-tank gun. The delay in its production, however, which did not begin until 1941, did not allow for the wide use of this gun. In 1934, the Regio Esercito adopted the Obice 75/18 model 1934, which was supposed to replace the outdated Obice Skoda 75/13 model 1915 used by mountain artillery units, and the Cannone 75/27 model 1906 and model 1911 used by artillery units of the Italian infantry divisions. The Obice 75/18 model 1934 had a range of 9,000 meters and had a gun shield to protect its crew. In 1935, a new version was introduced, the Obice 75/18 model 1935, which had a new gun shield and wheels with bigger diameter to ease towing by mechanical vehicles. Due to low production numbers, the Obice 75/18 never truly replaced its predecessors. It was not even adopted as a mountain artillery piece, the purpose for which it was created. In fact, it was mainly deployed as a field howitzer and occasionally even as an anti-tank gun with minor success against light armored vehicles. One of the gun's problems was the purpose for which it was created. The Regio Esercito favored a light, easily transportable gun at the cost of a small caliber and a limited range for divisional artillery. The Regio Esercito used the Obice 75/18 as a short-range support gun, deploying heavier and larger caliber howitzers for indirect and counter-battery fire. A few years later, the Weapons and Munitions Technical Service requested a new gun for divisional artillery. The main specification was an increase over the Obice 75/18's firing range, which only reached a maximum of 9,000 meters. This was significantly inferior to the ranges of its counterparts, such as the German 10.5 cm LEFH-18 at 10,600 meters, or British Ordnance quick-firing 25-pounder at 12,200 meters. The Regio Esercito also wanted to standardize divisional artillery production as much as possible, so the new gun was mounted on the same carriage as the Obice 75/18 model 1935. During a meeting of the Superior Technical Committee for Weapons and Munitions, the importance of the use of the Cannone 75/32 for long-range anti-tank fire was emphasized, which was useful for hitting vehicles outside the range of the Cannone 47/32 model 1935, which was the main anti-tank gun of the Regio Esercito. The first prototype was built by the Royal Army Arsenal of Naples, one of the biggest artillery-producing plants in Italy. It was unveiled by Ansaldo in 1937. The first guns produced had a longer barrel at 34 calibers, but after some tests of an experimental battery of 5 guns, the barrel was shortened to 32 calibers and equipped with a pepper pot muzzle brake, which was also used by the Obice 75/18 when mounted on semoventi. The original 34 caliber long barrel version was modified and then used to equip the Carro Armato P26/40 heavy tank and some Italian semoventi. In 1938, 192 Cannoni 75/32 were ordered from Ansaldo, but production was not given high priority, and it was not until 1941 that the first pieces were delivered. Although little consideration was given to the Cannone 75/32 Model 1937, some members of the Regio Esercito's high command understood the capable anti-tank characteristics of this piece. One of these was the Superior Inspector of Technical Services, General Mario Caracciolo di Ferroletto, who in November 1940 made a proposal to the General Staff of the Royal Army to adopt the Cannone a Grande Gittata 75/32 on a large scale. The proposal was rejected by the Regio Esercito, which on 9th December 1940 denied the permission to increase production of the cannon in roundup number 39853. This was justified by stating that crews needed too much time to put the gun in position, aim accurately, and fire against moving targets such as armored vehicles. In 1943, modifications were planned for the second batch ordered from Otto and Ansaldo Pozzuoli. The new guns would have had improved performance against armored vehicles by adopting an automatic breech, providing a thicker shield, and adding an elevation and firing lever to the left of the breech. However, in the end, none were built with these modifications. When the gun entered production in 1941 with Ansaldo in its plant in Pozzuoli, the price was of 470,300 lire for each gun, and the first examples left the factories at the end of the year. Production proceeded very slowly. By September 1942, there were only 49 pieces available, while by the summer of 1943 there were 172. In 1943, a second order was placed for a total of 483 guns. 303 were ordered from Ansaldo Pozzuoli, which represented 170 guns ordered by the Regio Esercito, and 133 guns previously ordered by Portugal and taken over by the Italians, and 180 guns from Otto. A document from the General Artillery Directorate Production Department dated June 1943 stated that Ansaldo Pozzuoli could produce 60 Cannoni 75/32 per month. However, no guns of the second order were completed due to the Italian armistice. The gun had a two-tailed carriage which could be spread apart or folded into two parts, which allowed for adaptability to various terrain elevations and allowed 50 degrees traverse and an elevation of -10 to +45 degrees. The cannon was also equipped with a 4.2mm thick shield. The breech block was exclusively manually operated. The spoked wheels were initially made of electron, a magnesium and aluminum alloy. However, during production, a steel sheet was used instead. The suspension of the gun was composed of torsion bars, the same as those on the Obice 75/18 models 1934 and 1935. The gun weighed 1,160 kilograms. It was designed to be towed by light prime movers, like the Fiat Spa TL37, although animal transport by horse was also possible. Officially, a towing speed of 45 to 60 km per hour was estimated, but in regular use the speeds were probably much lower. In 1943, two different variants of the gun were studied. The first was an aviation version, while the second was to be installed inside the fortifications of the Littorio Alpine Wall. The complex of bunkers and other defensive positions that defended Italy's Alpine borders with Austria, France, Switzerland, and Yugoslavia. Unfortunately, nothing is known about the fate of these projects, but they were most likely abandoned because of the armistice of 8th September 1943. There are some photos of a Cannone 75/32 at Ansaldo in Genoa Cornigliano in 1942 that appeared to be undergoing testing for installation on an aircraft. The cannon was placed inside a structure that simulated the nose of an aircraft, possibly to test the resistance of the nose to the muzzle flash during firing. The Cannone 75/32 had a crew of 4 men. including the gunner who sat on the left and had control over horizontal aiming, while the shooter sat on the right and had control over the firing lever and the elevation adjustment. The other two crew members were responsible for supplying ammunition to the cannon. The Cannone a Grande Gittata 75/32 model 1937 saw very limited use. The first unit to use this piece was the 201st Motorized Artillery Regiment, assigned to the Italian Expeditionary Corps in Russia, which was later renamed to the Italian Army in Russia, or 8th Army. Under the overall command of Colonel Enrico Altavilla, the regiment and its 36 guns were organized into 3 groups. Lieutenant Colonel Laguardia's 1st group, Lieutenant Colonel Francesco Zingale's 2nd group, and Major Vitale's 3rd group. On the Eastern Front, a gun battery supported the attack of the Alpine Battalion Vestone, belonging to the 2nd Alpine Division Tridentina, against a Soviet stronghold in the village of Scarce on 31st August 1942. Another battery was sent as reinforcement along with the 1st Motorcycle Company to the village of Bolskoi to reinforce the 2nd Infantry Division Sforzesca on 5th September. The entire 201st Motorized Artillery Regiment was destroyed during the Second Defensive Battle of the Don, during Operation Little Saturn and the Ostrogozhsk-Rossosh offensive between December 1942 and January 1943. There is little information on the regiment's deployment during this time. On 16th December 1942, the 1st Battery of the 1st Group, assigned to the 9th Infantry Division Pasubio, was involved in defending against the attack of the Soviet 38th Guards Division. The battery was completely destroyed by Russian forces, who killed all the artillerymen. On 18th December, a section of the 3rd Group defended the village of Tali, together with an amalgamation of Italian and German troops until the next day, when the defenses passed into the hands of German units only. By 1943, there were only 4 Cannone 75/32 groups left. 2 of these were assigned to the 135th Armored Division Ariete II, which was deployed near Rome. They took part in the clashes against the Germans after the armistice of 8 September 1943. The other 2 groups were assigned to the 11th Infantry Division Brennero, deployed in Greece and Albania. A photograph shows 2 guns of the 11th Infantry Division Brennero used by the partisan battalion Gramsci, which was formed after the armistice of 8 September 1943 by soldiers from the 41st Infantry Division Firenze, 11th Infantry Division Brennero, and 53rd Infantry Division Arezzo. The Italian soldiers, under the command of Sergeant Tersilio Cardinali, joined the 1st Partisan Brigade of the Albanian Liberation Army in the days after the armistice, preferring to fight against the Germans. After the armistice, the Germans captured 48 guns intact, naming them 7.5 cm Feldkanone 248I, using them both on the Italian front and in Yugoslavia against Tito's partisans. The only photo of them in German use shows a gun used by Fallschirmjägers, probably in Italy. In the book Latin American Wars 1900 to 1941, Banana Wars, Border Wars and Revolutions, Philip S. Jowett mentions that Peru acquired some Cannone 75/32 in 1941, but no further information is available. Portugal had also ordered 133 guns during the war, but the order was later cancelled and the guns taken over by the Regio Esercito, and no cannons were built and delivered afterward. The Cannone 75/32 was mounted on a few vehicles, but it was also the basis for the creation of the Cannone 75/34, which was mounted on the Carro Armato P2640 and on some self-propelled artillery vehicles. In July 1940, General Mario Caracciolo di Ferroleto, the Superior Inspector of Technical Service, had two mock-ups of the Carro Armato P2640 tank built, one by Ansaldo and the other by the Directorate of Motor Vehicles. Both models were armed with a Cannone 75/32 Model 1937 and a 20mm Breda 20/65 Model 1935 in the turret. The gun on Ansaldo's mock-up did not have a muzzle brake, as it was not yet necessary for recoil management. The Cannone 75/32 Model 1937 was chosen because it had already been in development since 1937, and preferred over the Obice 75/18 included in earlier mock-ups. The first prototype of the P2640 was equipped with a dummy gun in December 1941. Eventually, in the spring of 1942, the Cannone 75/34 was chosen as the main armament because it was specifically developed for use on vehicles. It featured a semi-automatic vertical sliding breech block and a completely revised and more suitable recoil mechanism designed for enclosed use. In the summer of 1941, the Army General Staff had to choose whether to mount the Obice 75/18 or the Cannone 75/34 Modello Sfera on self-propelled guns. With circular number 11914 on 21st June 1941, the choice fell on the latter, but since the Cannone 75/34 was not yet available, a Cannone 75/32 was mounted on the hull of the Semovente M40 self-propelled gun on an experimental basis. The model, however, was not approved. Some sources mistakenly claim that the Semovente M40-75/32 was mass-produced. In fact, they state that 24 or 25 of these Semoventi were deployed with the 135th Armored Division Ariete II during the defense of Rome on 9th and 10th September 1943. This is wrong. The 135th had only 24 Cannoni a Grande Gittata 75/32 towed guns in its ranks, and these were deployed in the defense of the Italian capital. Apart from the prototype with license plate RE4443, based on an early production Carro Armato M14/41, the Semovente M40 75/32 was not produced. In 1943, Ansaldo studied the installation of the Cannone 75/32 Model 1937 on the hull of the 3-ton Maffei Fiat 727 half-track. The development was never finished due to the armistice of 8th September 1943. The Germans also stopped the production of the 3-ton Fiat 727 half-track, putting an end to any further development. The Cannone a Grande Gittata 75/32 Model 1937 was a potent artillery piece, perhaps the best anti-tank gun developed by the Kingdom of Italy. Nevertheless, it suffered greatly due to the underdeveloped Italian industry and the lack of foresight of the Regio Esercito's high command. Mass production starting from 1937 would surely have allowed equipping Italian soldiers with a decent anti-tank weapon with which to counter enemy armor, primarily the Matilda tanks in North Africa, which spearheaded the British counter-offensive in Libya in winter 1940-1941. Although it also performed well on the Eastern Front against T-34s, the Cannone 75/43, which was the Italian designation for the German Pak-40, was adopted in 1943 by the Regio Esercito, and was eventually preferred by the Italian troops for its precision and better anti-tank characteristics, even if many soldiers consider it too heavy. This concludes our look at this Italian World War II field howitzer. If you liked our video, do consider subscribing, and please leave a like and a comment for the algorithm, which is our god. Thank you, and you can check out our website for more articles like this, but, in written form. Until next time, keep us in your sights.